human tamed the beast we worshipped. Now I can't stop thinking about him, asterisk human males. A galactic myth, Queen Vellani laughed. Right before one crashed through her temple, ceiling naked, confused and very, very real. One moment. She was standing in her sacred bath chamber, steam curling around the glowing waters. It's about to step into the pool for her coronation cleansing. The next moment, there was a loud explosion above, followed by falling debris, a broken skylight, a very large, very wet human body slamming into the temple floor. Everyone froze. Vellani's handmaidens screamed. Her guards raised their stun spears. And Queen Vellani herself stared wide-eyed, jaw hanging open at the naked creature lying at her feet, groaning and blinking like he'd just woken up from a strange dream. He was tall, broad, muscular, in a way that no cloned consort ever was. His skin was a rich, sunburnished tan, marred only by a few healed scars across his chest and arms. His face was rugged, square-jawed, and scruffy, with short, dark hair and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. But it wasn't his face that held Vellani's attention. It was ... lower. There it was. The proof, the legend, dangling between his legs, like a relic from the past. The sacred human organ. She stepped forward slowly, her ceremonial robe clinging to her curves, still dripping from the steam. "Is that real?" she whispered half to herself. The man groaned, sat up, and squinted at her. "I swear," he muttered, rubbing the back of his head. "This is the last time I let the autopilot flirt with black holes." His voice was deep, scratchy, and undeniably male. Vellani had never heard that kind of voice before. Low, rough, unpolished. It sent a strange shiver down her spine. The guards approached, weapons still pointed. "Identify yourself, intruder," one of them snapped. The man looked around at the high ceilings, the marble floors, and all the blue-skinned, silver-haired alien women glaring at him like he'd insulted their entire bloodline. He grinned. Names: Jack Carter, pilot, mechanic, occasional hero, and I have no idea where the hell I am, but you ladies have some amazing architecture. Vellani stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You're human," she said, voice steady despite the wild pounding. In her chest, a male human. He looked down at himself, then back at her. "Guilty as charged. Now usually I don't make an entrance this naked." Nice pool, by the way. "You crashed through the ceiling of the royal bath hall," she replied. "During my coronation." Jack winced. "Well, hell of a way to say hello." The guards surged forward to seize him, but Vellani raised a hand. "Stop." They halted, confused. She walked closer, her gaze never leaving Jack. He stood now, still completely bare, unashamed. His body was impressive, even by warrior standards. But it wasn't just his size. It was the way he stood, like he owned the space around him. Like he wasn't afraid, and that fascinated her. "You should be a myth," she said quietly. "Males like you haven't been seen in over 500 years. Our society evolved beyond the need for them." Jack scratched his head. "Guess I'm old-fashioned. Still work the manual way, if you catch my meaning." Vellani's lips twitched. She shouldn't be smiling. She should be furious, embarrassed, outraged. But all she could think about was the way his eyes lingered on her, not with fear or all but with interest. Desire. Like she wasn't just a queen, but a woman. "You fell from the sky." She murmured almost to herself. "Not my most graceful landing," he said, looking around for his gear. "But I've had worse. Any chance I could borrow a towel?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer. The temple was silent now. Everyone was watching, and she reached out, fingers brushing over the firm muscle of his chest, then lower. "Remarkable," she breathed. Jack blinked. "I'm not sure if I should be flattered or nervous." Vellani met his eyes. "Both." Then she turned to the guards. "Take him to the royal chambers." The guards hesitated. "Your Majesty, he's ... dangerous." "Yes," Vellani smiling. "I know." And as Jack Carter was escorted still very naked through the marbled halls of the temple, he glanced back at the queen who had just touched him like he was a long-lost treasure. She watched him go, mind spinning. Her people believed men like him were myths, nothing but whispers from Earth's ancient past. But now she knew the truth. Humans weren't just real, they were huge. Jack Carter had never been escorted anywhere by 10 armored alien women, especially. Not while completely naked. But here he was, barefoot. Bare everything marching through the shining halls of an alien palace while confused servants peeked from behind jeweled curtains. He couldn't help it, he waved at one of them. "Hey there, don't mind me. It's just your friendly neighborhood space crash." One of the guards grunted silence. Jack winked. "Wow, you ladies are really into discipline, kinky." Behind him, Queen Vellani followed with slow, graceful steps, her eyes never leaving Jack's back. Or, more specifically, the lower half of his back. She'd spent her whole life hearing the ancient tales of Earth males with strange appetites, brute instincts and primitive ways. Biologically inefficient, emotionally unstable, politically chaotic, but no ancient scroll had prepared her. For him, Jack was nothing like the soft-skinned donor clones in their sterile labs. He had presence, heat. His muscles moved like sculpted machinery. His voice dripped with sarcasm, and his body language screamed one thing. He was a real man who didn't care what anyone thought. And the most dangerous part made her laugh. "Where? Are you taking me?" Jack asked the guards, glancing over his shoulder. "Hopefully somewhere with pants?" "You'll be examined," Vellani replied, her voice cool but curious. "Scientifically, thoroughly." Jack arched a brow. "Wow, you don't waste time? Can I at least get a dinner invitation first?" "You fell into my bath naked," she said dryly. "We are well past formalities." He grinned. "Fair point, Your Majesty." They entered a sleek chamber filled with glowing instruments and hovering screens. Alien scientists, more blue-skinned women stood, frozen in awe. When they saw Jack's anatomy, half of them dropped their data pads. "My stars," one whispered. "The ancient design, it's functional," another gasped. "And so," large Vellani tilted her head. "Is that normal for humans?" Jack chuckled. "Where I'm from, above average, but I'm not bragging." It's the room filled with frantic note-taking and whispers. Someone took measurements. Someone else fainted. Jack just stood there, arms folded across his chest, watching it all with a bemused smirk. "Do you always get this kind of attention?" Vellani asked, circling him slowly, eyes narrowing with fascination. "Only when I walk in naked," Jack said, which shockingly isn't often. She stopped in front of him. "Close. Too close. Your presence is destabilizing," she murmured too. "Your government?" Jack asked. Vellani's eyes flicked down, then back to his. "To my nervous system." Jack didn't reply right away. The tension between them had shifted. Less about curiosity, more about heat. Like two magnetic fields pulling closer and closer. "I think," he said softly, "you're not used to being around real men." Vellani swallowed. Her people's males, those who weren't long extinct, had been gentle, engineered, and utterly obedient. Jack was none of that. He was unpredictable, dangerous, and that made her want to touch him again. "Leave us," Vellani told the scientists. "But Highness, now." The room cleared quickly. Jack stood still, lips twitching. "So, this is the part where you dissect me, or?" Vellani stepped forward and placed a hand on his chest. Her fingers were cool, her touch light, but her voice firm. "Human, I want to understand you personally." Jack raised both brows. "I'm all for interstellar diplomacy, but are you sure? I've been told I leave quite an impression. I'm counting on it." He leaned in just a little. "So what's first?" "A quiz. Genetic compatibility tests?" Him, it wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was like a queen taking exactly what she wanted. Her mouth on his, her body pressed against him, fingers tangling in his messy hair. Jack reacted with pure instinct, pulling her closer, their bodies fitting like puzzle pieces, long missing each other. The kiss deepened, grew hungrier. He lifted her onto the nearest examination table, her legs wrapping around him. "My people will riot," she whispered against his mouth. "They'll get over it," he muttered, kissing down her throat. Besides, it's for science. Alani laughed Hath. She slipped her hands under his arms and pulled him tight. Her long tail curled possessively around his leg. That night, Queen, who had never touched a man, found herself tangled in human muscle. Human warmth and something else she'd never experienced before. Emotion. Real emotion. No pheromones. Chemicals. No programmed bonding cycles. Just fire. Raw, human fire. Later, lying beside him, breathless and glowing with postcoital bliss, Vallani traced circles on Jack's chest. I see now why your species was feared. Jack smiled lazily. Because of our superior intellect? No, she said, eyes dark with amusement. Because if your kind had stayed, no female would have ever willingly bred with anyone else again. He laughed, pulled her close, and whispered, Guess I'm a living relic. No, she murmured. You're something better. What's that? Vallani kissed him again. You're mine now. And Jack didn't argue, because somehow being owned by the most powerful woman in the galaxy didn't sound bad at all. Queen Vallani hadn't slept in her own bed since the night Jack Carter crashed through her ceiling and into her life. Instead, she now slept in the royal laboratory. On purpose, not for research, not for diplomacy, for him. Jack Carter, human male, was officially listed in palace records as Specimen Zero, the first of his kind encountered in over 5 centuries. But unofficially, among whispering handmaidens and scandalized council matrons, he had many other names. The Queen's Distraction, the Flesh Diplomat, the Starborn Scandal. And Vallani didn't care, because every night when the royal halls went dark, she snuck down the curved, echoing staircase, dismissed the guards outside Lab Wing 9, and locked herself in with the one man who made her heart thrum like a battle drum. And every night, Jack greeted her the same way, shirtless, grinning, and holding out a strange earth fruit he'd smuggled in from the wreck of his ship. Evening. Your hotness, he said, tossing her a bite of something juicy and sweet. Try this. Tastes like strawberries mixed with rebellion. She bit into it, juice dripping down her chin. Delicious. So are you, he replied, already pulling her into his arms. They made love like explorers charting forbidden territory. Fast at first, then slow, deep, careful, like every moment could be their last. And they wanted to memorize the map of each other's bodies, by touch, sound, and scent alone. It was more than just pleasure, it was connection. Vallani had grown up believing her body belonged to the state, to tradition, to ceremonial obligation. Physical contact in her society was calculated, controlled, and always supervised by healers and historians. But with Jack, there was no control, only surrender. He taught her how to kiss without protocol, how to laugh with her mouth full, how to moan without shame. In return, she taught him the royal dialect, the secrets of the stars her people charted, and the private meanings behind the ceremonial tattoos inked across her lower back. He particularly enjoyed studying those, but what fascinated her more than anything was the human difference. Not just his size, though. Yes, that was considerable. Earth males, as it turned out, were biologically equipped for something far more vigorous than her people's sterile donor unions. No, it was his heat. Human males ran warmer, not just in body temperature, but in emotion. Jack felt things loudly. He didn't just speak, shouted, laughed, cursed, groaned, and when he touched her, it was like he wasn't just using his hands. He used his whole soul. Late one night, as Vallani lay sprawled across his chest, her glowing silver hair tangled over his stomach, she whispered, "You're going to ruin me." Jack blinked. "Ruin you?" She nodded. "I'm not supposed to. Want this? Any of this. I'm not supposed to want you." He ran his fingers through her hair. "But you do." "Yes," she admitted. "I want you so badly I forget who I'm supposed to be." Jack sat up, pulling her into his lap, skin against skin. "Sweetheart," he said, voice low and serious, "I crashed onto this planet by accident, But you. You landed right here. He pressed a hand over her heart on purpose. Villani felt her throat tighten. He always said the corniest things, and somehow made them sound profound outside. The moonlight shimmered across the palace towers. Inside, a queen melted into a man who didn't bow to her crown but worshipped her in ways no one else ever had. But the world outside their bubble wasn't sleeping. The Council of Matrons had called for a full review of Villani's recent irregular behavior. She hadn't attended a single dawn ritual in 5 days. She'd ignored 3 diplomatic envoys and postponed the mandatory fertility renewal ceremony. Worse, there were rumors that she'd been seen smiling, laughing, touching a man. That she was no longer pure. That she had bonded with the alien. Impossible, Matron Elari hissed during a closed-door session. He's a relic from a failed species, a dangerous brute. If the other sectors find out our queen is mating with a wild male, we'll be laughed out of the Galactic Council. And if she breeds with him, another matron added, it could destabilize the entire genetic structure of our next generation. She already has, whispered a trembling assistant. We scanned her chambers. She's showing early signs. Silence, then chaos. Back in the lab. Jack was nibbling on Valana's ear when she suddenly went stiff. Someone's coming, she whispered, pulling away, tail twitching with tension. Jack blinked. That's usually a good thing in here. Not that kind of coming. Seconds later, the door burst open. Guards flooded the room. Council members followed. All eyes went from Jack's bare chest to the queen's flushed cheeks, to the very clear evidence of their entanglement. Her robes half open, his hands still on her hips. Your Majesty, Elari growled. You will step away from that creature. Immediately, Jack raised both eyebrows. Creature? Bit rude, considering I'm not the one barging in uninvited? Villani moved in front of him, protective. If you lay one hand on him, I will. You are with child, Elari, cut in, voice trembling. You have polluted the royal bloodline with primitive DNA. Call it what you want, Jack said, stepping up beside Villani. But if that baby has half her strength and half my charm, say your empire just hit the genetic jackpot? The matrons gasped. Villani didn't flinch. She reached for Jack's hand and laced her fingers with his. I chose him, she said, her voice like fire. And if that means I lose my crown, so be it. You would throw away 10,000 years of order? Elari spat. For a human? Villani looked at Jack, at the man who showed her how to feel, how to live, and smiled. No, I'm building a new order. One with room for passion, for difference, for real love. Jack gave a mock bow. You heard the lady? That night, they were exiled from the palace, but they didn't flee in fear. They left together hand in hand. Heart to heart in a mission to find a place where a queen and her human could raise a child in peace. And maybe, just maybe, show the galaxy what real unity looked like. Villani didn't just crave him anymore, she needed him. And Jack was all in for her. It's for their future, and for the little hybrid queen growing inside her, proof that sometimes love really did rewrite. The stars, asterisk, the stars didn't feel quite so cold when someone held your hand. Queen. Villana formerly, her galactic holiness of the Elari matriarch, stood barefoot on the ridge of a moonlit canyon. Wind teasing her silver hair, her ceremonial robes were gone, replaced by a loose tunic Jack had sewn together from his ship's thermal blankets. It smelled faintly of smoke, leather, and him. Behind her, Jack was struggling with a solar kettle. Okay, I think I almost have it, he muttered. The kettle hissed, sparked, and launched itself 3 feet into the air before landing upside down. All right, scratch that. I do not have it. Villani smiled. You've been wrestling with that device for an hour. Jack stood, dusting off his hands. Hey, space camping is harder than it looks. You want gourmet breakfast or alien? Instant noodles? I want your hands not to catch fire again, she said, stepping up and kissing his cheek. Also, the noodles. They'd been on the run for 11 days now, traveling across the outer moons in a scavenged transport pod. hiding in places the matriarchy never bothered to scan: canyons, frozen caverns, even one overgrown asteroid that smelled like sweaty mushrooms. But they were together, and that mattered. More than comfort, more than crowns, more than politics, especially now that Villani's body was changing her pregnancy. Confirmed by both Jack's ship medkit and her own biological scans, was unlike anything recorded in the last 500 years of Alari history. Not just because it was natural conception, but because her DNA was merging with human genes in unpredictable, astonishing ways. Her skin glowed warmer, her senses had sharpened, and her mood swings, well, let's just say Jack had learned very quickly that offering chocolate was the universal solution to most hormonal problems, even on alien worlds. He handed her a warm bowl. Here, nutrient soup. Comes with complimentary foot rub, if you don't throw it at me again. I didn't. Throw it, she huffed. You hurled it. Like a goddess with a grudge. She looked at him sideways. I was having a hormonal episode. The child is very dramatic. Jack pointed at her stomach. Takes after her mother, Villani blinked. Her, yeah, Jack grinned. A hunch she's gonna be a fighter. Probably inherit your stare and my refusal to shut up. Villani ran a hand over her belly, already swelling slightly beneath the tunic. I hope she has your heart. Jack tilted his head. You mean the one that keeps melting every time you kiss me? Or the one that makes really bad jokes when I'm nervous? She smiled. Both. He leaned in and kissed her forehead, lips lingering. Well then, she's gonna be unstoppable. Peace never lasted long. They were making camp near a crystalline lake when the skies turned red with matriarch patrol beacons. Villani tensed. Watching them sweep low in the distance, they're still searching. Of course they are, Jack. Said they lost their queen and gained a very attractive fugitive. I thought you didn't like being hunted. I don't, he said, slipping a pulse rifle onto his back. But I like you, and I love the little war goddess you're growing in there. Villani turned, her hand gently gripping his shirt. We can't keep running forever.
Ow.
He agreed. But we don't have to run alone. He'd been waiting for the right time. Now it was here. Jack pulled a data chip from his boots, maul, scratched and ancient. What is that? A call, he said. To some old friends of mine. Other humans, survivors, were scattered across the stars, but we keep contact. Villani blinked. There are more of you. He smirked. You thought I was impressive? Wait till you meet my cousin Ava. She once beat a four-armed warlord in hand-to-hand combat while in labor. Impressive. She used the umbilical cord to choke him out. Long story. Anyway, if I send this signal, they'll come. Villani hesitated. Won't that put them in danger? He touched her face.
Ow.
They'll come because it's dangerous.
Admit now.
That's the thing about humans, we're stubborn idiots. Our own. She stared at him, tears prickling at the corners of her alien eyes. She had never felt so safe and so loved. Send it, she said. 2 days later, help arrived. A rickety freighter painted with rude slogans in 10 languages dropped, out of orbit, landed with one engine still on fire, and opened its cargo bay to reveal the most chaotic crew Villani had ever seen. Humans. Loud. Laughing, cursing, carrying crates, welding tools, and laser pistols. And they loved Jack. Jackie, you son of a bitch, shouted a woman with oil-stained dreadlocks, tackling him in a hug. Who's the Space Queen? Jack introduced Villani. This is Queen Villani of the Ilari matriarchy. She's smarter than all of you put together, and also pregnant with my child. So, be cool. Ava grinned. Damn, you finally knocked up royalty. Didn't think you had it in you. Jack shrugged. Turns out I had plenty in me. Villani's cheeks turned violet. Your species is remarkably vulgar. Ava snorted. Oh, honey, you haven't even seen our weddings. With backup, the exiled lovers began to plan. Villani couldn't return to the matriarchy, not yet. But her people needed to see the truth, that their culture, their traditions, and their future didn't need to fear change. They needed to evolve. And Jack, for all his sarcasm and innuendo, believed in something Villani hadn't seen in centuries: hope together. They prepared to build a new Havana hidden city on a moon the matrons had long abandoned. A place where humans and Alari could live, love, and raise children without fear. A place to begin again, and at its center, a palace with no throne. Just a bed big enough for a queen, her wild human mate. And their soon-to-arrive half-human daughter, already kicking hard enough to knock over mugs and give Jack bruises during Jack bruises. Naps. She's gonna be a handful, he muttered one night, resting his head on Villani's belly. You say that like it's a bad thing, she whispered back, running her fingers through his hair. He smiled sleepily. It's not. Hope she doesn't break me before I get to teach her how to fly. Villani laughed softly. In the middle of exile, with warships hunting them, and a child kicking her ribs, she had never felt more alive, or more in love. Asterisk. The baby came during a meteor storm. Lightning streaked across the upper atmosphere of the forgotten moon they now called home, casting strange shadows across the new settlement. Wind howled through half-built structures, but inside the makeshift birthing doma, converted human. Engineering bay padded with every blanket Jack could find. Time had stopped. Queen Villani. No longer ruler of an empire, but something far more sacred, a mother in labor, lay sweating. Glowing, clutching Jack's hand so hard he was sure he'd never use that wrist again. You're doing great, Jack said, wincing. And also crushing my bones, but mostly great. Villani growled something in Ilari that sounded very close to shut up or I will gut you with your own spine. Jack wisely shut up. Ava stood nearby, managing the improvised med unit with military precision. She's almost here, she said, scanning the vitals. Heartbeat strong. She's got your stubbornness and her mother's sense of timing. I'm terrified and turned on, Jack muttered. Then came the cry. Not a whimper, not a squeal, but a long, fierce roar. The baby emerged in a pulse of warm light Alari and human DNA, entwined in ways no scientist had predicted. Her skin was soft lavender, with faint silver veins that shimmered when she moved. Her eyes opened instantly bright blue. Like her father's butt, they glowed with something ancient, something powerful. Villani laughed and sobbed at the same time. She's perfect. Jack stared down at the tiny bundle in his arms, completely floored. She's got your ears and your death glare. She gets that from both of us. He leaned in and kissed Villani's forehead. You did it, Queenie. We did it, human. Ava clapped her hands. Congratulations. You two just made the galaxy's most adorable political crisis. They named her Surf. It meant dawn in the old tongue, a symbol of beginnings, of light after shadow, of the future they never thought they'd have. And Cerise. She was special. By 3 weeks, she could lift her head and stare with that unsettling royal calm that made even the older engineers feel self-conscious. By 2 months, she was floating midair during Napsalari. Telekinesis blended with raw, human nerve impulse control. By 6 months, she'd said her first word. It wasn't mama or dada, it was boom, which was technically accurate, since she'd said it right as Jack overloaded a power cell and nearly set his eyebrows. On fire? Villani was thrilled, Jack. Slightly terrified. I think she's learning too fast, he muttered, holding Cerise at arm's length. She babbled in multiple languages and occasionally flickered with minor gravitational warps. Better fast than fragile, Villani said. Proudly, she's the future of both our peoples. Jack shook his head. She's going to either unite the galaxy or vaporize a city by accident. Villani gave him a sideways smirk. Let's aim for both. Word of the hybrid child spread fast. Even in exile, the signal couldn't be contained. The matriarchy's sensors picked up faint pulses of Alari psychic waves mixed with something foreign, something alive. When the council saw the scans, they paled. She exists, Alari whispered. The rumors were true. And her power. Asked a nervous minister of rituals. Off the charts. She registers as both telepathic and empathic. Her biological signature is new. It's not synthetic. Not from a lab. She is a natural-born fusion. The High Council panicked. If Cerise became a symbol of change, if the people learned that natural reproduction with a human had produced not weakness, but strength, everything they'd built would be challenged, so they did what every fearful government does when threatened. By the future, they sent an assassin. The bounty hunter came at night. She wore cloaked armor designed to bend around starlight. She carried blades dipped in neural poison. Her orders were simple: eliminate the child, end the prophecy, silence the legend. But Cerise was awake and laughing because Jack had just tied pots to his boots and was pretending to dance like a malfunctioning robot to distract her from teething. The moment the assassin breached the camp perimeter, Cerise turned her head. The baby stopped laughing. Her eyes glowed and every light in the settlement exploded. Villani leapt from her bed, ready summoning defensive fields. Jack grabbed a plasma wrench. No time for guns. The assassin rushed forward, but the air thickened, gravity bending. Her body slammed into the ground as if a mountain sat on her back. Cirrus sat in her crib, arms up, giggling like it was a game. Villani's eyes widened. She protected herself. Jack whistled. I knew she was advanced, but damn, the assassin writhed, pinned. Jack disarmed her with a swift kick and dragged her into the torchlight. Your matriarchy's getting desperate, he said. Sending killers after a baby? Classy. Villani stood over the captured hunter. Go back to the council. Tell them this child is not a threat. She is an evolution. The next chapter cannot stop what's already begun. The assassin spat at their feet, but her eyes held fear, because she had seen the truth. Baby wasn't a liability. She was the future. Over the next year, something changed. Ilari citizens, scientists, scholars, even former priestesses began sneaking off-world to visit the exile colony. They wanted to see Sir, to learn from her, to believe soon. Villani's settlement grew. Humans and Ilari worked side by side. New schools were built, new rituals invented, ones that honored both logic and love. The child who was supposed to end the world was rebuilding it. Jack walked beside Villani one evening, arm around her, waist, watching Cerise float a ball into the air, using nothing but giggles and willpower. She's going to be a legend, isn't she? He said softly. Villani nodded. No, she already is. And us? Jack asked. Villani kissed him. We're the story behind the legend. He looked into her glowing violet eyes. Not bad for a guy who fell through a ceiling and ruined your bath, she smirked. You ruined my coronation, my robes, my walls, my public image, and stole your heart, that too. They stood there, two fugitives, now leaders of a new world, watching their daughter shape the air, the future, and maybe the stars. Asterisk, the palace hadn't changed. Same polished marble floors. Same looming silver spires. Same giant throne chamber. Where Villani had once stood alone, cloaked in ritual and duty, surrounded by silence, pretending to be wisdom. But this time, she didn't walk in alone. This time, Jack Carter, former crash-landing naked intruder, current co-founder of a growing off-world colony, strolled in beside her in a fitted leather jacket, plasma pistol at his hip, and a smirk that said, I dare you to throw me out again. Behind them, in her floating hover cradle surrounded by humming protective fields, was Cyrus, now 2 years old, and already breaking the laws of gravity on a daily basis. She sucked on a glowing fruit, blinking curiously at the enormous gold statues, as if she might accidentally rearrange them with her mind. Ilari. Guards flinched when they passed, not from fear of weapons, from awe. Villani's people had watched transmissions unauthorized, pirated across planets, showing the child lifting boulders with her mind, healing injured animals with a touch, speaking in 3 dialects before age 2. They called her Zuratan, now the Sparkborn, the living prophecy, and now the queen who had left it all behind had returned, with her human lover and their child, to finish what they'd started, to change everything. Try not to touch anything, Villani murmured. To Jack as they neared the royal hall, he raised a brow. Because it's sacred? Because most of it explodes when you breathe near it. He smirked. Sounds like our first date. The council chamber looked exactly as Jack remembered it, cold, intimidating, and full of disapproving odor. Women who stared at him like he'd farted during a funeral. Villani didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her chin-high voice calm. "Hi, Matron Ilari. Council members, we've returned. Not in exile, but by invitation." Ilari sat on her high seat, ancient and elegant in her ceremonial silks. Her expression was carved from stone, but her voice dripped ice. "You return, with a hybrid child born of blasphemy, a man who defiled our queen, and a vision of chaos. Why should we not arrest you where you stand?" Jack stepped up, casually cracking his neck, because if you try, your city's going to have a crater. "Where the palace used to be," gasps echoed. Spheres crackled to life. Villani didn't even blink. "He's joking, mostly." Jack nodded. "Mostly, look, I get it. I crashed your coronation, seduced your queen, and made a baby with, well, rather impressive genetics." Cerise burped softly, then giggled. A chandelier above her wobbled. "But here's what you don't get," Jack said, stepping up to the council platform. "You didn't lose a queen, you gained the future. She's not a mistake, she's a miracle." He pointed to Cerise, who was now levitating her entire hover cradle by humming to herself. "Your society built walls around love, around biology, around truth, and all we did was tear one down." The chamber fell silent. Villani stepped up. Beside him, "Our daughter is stronger than any donor child your labs have ever produced. Not because she's half human, because she was created through something real. Not a process, not a ritual. Love." Councilmember Sura shifted in her seat. "Love is not scalable policy. Neither is extinction," Villani shot back. "And that's what we were heading toward. Your cloning systems are breaking down. Fertility rates are dropping. Your scientists whisper it behind closed doors." Ilari narrowed her eyes. "You speak of love as if it were superior to order." Jack shrugged. "It is. Order breaks. Love bends and adapts. That's how humans survived for so long. It's not because we were perfect, but because we're impossible to kill off." "Speak carefully, human," another matron hissed. "You tread dangerously close to defiance." He turned slowly. "Lady, I was born in defiance, raised on chaos, bathed in rebellion. I crashed a spaceship through your royal ceiling naked and still came out the winner." Cerise floated higher in her cradle. Her little hands sparked with pink light. Villani took a breath. "We didn't come here to fight. We came to offer something new." "What?" Ilari snapped. "Peace." "No," Jack said, grinning. "Partnership." Outside the palace, people were gathering. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Holograms of Cirrus lit the sky, public broadcasts of her first steps. Her first laugh, her first pulse wave burst that accidentally made a tree sing for 3 hours. The people wanted to see her, believe in something new. The city guards couldn't stop them, because many of them were them. Villani stood on the balcony now, in full view of the plaza. She didn't wear her crown. She didn't need to. "This child," she said to the crowd, voice ringing with quiet power, "is not here to replace your ways but to grow them. She is the child of 2 worlds, 2 people, 2 kinds of strength." Jack stepped beside her, holding Cerise in one arm, waving casually to a few shocked nobles. "And if we can create something this beautiful," he added, "maybe it's time to stop being afraid of mixing bloodlines and start mixing barbecues." Villani turned to him. "That made no sense," he shrugged. "It sounded wise in my head." By nightfall, the tide had turned. Young Ilari flooded the streets. New chants rose in old tongues. A dozen planetary governments sent envoys, offering to host Cerise for peaceful studies. Scientists begged for samples not to dissect, but to learn. In Matron Ilari. She stepped down. No one needed to force her. She simply watched the crowd, the child, the hope, and realized her time was over. "It is not the world I wanted," she whispered to Villani in private, "but perhaps the one we need." Villani nodded. "You taught me strength through silence. Now, let me teach strength through love." The next day, the council voted unanimously. Queen Villani was reinstated, but with a twist. Jack Carter was declared first consort, not a ceremonial donor, not a symbol, but a true ruler beside her, and Cerise. She was recognized as the heir of union first of her kind, but not the last, because hundreds of applications flooded in from both human and Ilari, seeking permission to live in the new mixed colony, to raise families. Real ones, messy, loud, wild, loving ones. That night, as fireworks lit the skies over Ilari Prime, Villani curled against Jack on the royal balcony. "Do you think it'll last?" she asked, watching Cerise chase butterflies with her mind. Jack kissed her shoulder. "Probably not. Nothing ever does. But that's not why we do it." "Why then?" He looked at her, voice quiet. "'Cause trying is the only way anything ever changes." She nodded slowly. "Then let's keep trying. For her, for all of them," Jack said, pulling her close. "One weird family at a time." They didn't call it a kingdom anymore. They called it the Unity Accord, not a throne, not a crown, not a matriarchy, or a Terran colony, or a religious order. Just a world rebuilt, reimagined, and reborn around the idea that love could do what war, law, and logic had failed to: bring peace between worlds. And at the center of it all, standing atop a flowering terrace carved from old stone and new steel, was the reason why Sirs. 3 years old now, and already reading in 2 languages. Still short enough to trip over her own tail, yet somehow wise enough to stop fights between fully grown diplomats just by smiling. She was a paradox wrapped in lavender skin and glowing haraqual parts, wonder and wildness, a goddess in footy. Pajamas. Queen Villani, no longer just monarch, but mother, watched her daughter levitate a row of fruit pebbles into the air and rearrange them in the shape of a dragon. "I told you," Jack muttered, standing beside her with a cup of stim coffee. "She's going to end up running the place before she hits 10. "She already does," Villani said with a proud smirk. The air smelled of flowers and engine grease, a perfect blend of human mess and Ilari elegance. Below the terrace, 1,000 delegates from 100 systems gathered for the first ever interstellar Accord of Natural Kinship INAK, which Jack said sounded like a sneeze, but could change the galaxy. Gone were the sterile halls and ceremonial robes. Now people wore what they wanted. Families came, partners of all shapes, colors, and biology. Humans and Ilari weren't just allies now, they were in-laws, and the galaxy had never been more confused, or more hopeful. 3 years ago, Carter had fallen through a ceiling, naked, uninvited, unimpressed by ancient traditions or sacred walls. Now, he was Commander Carter of the Unity Vanguard, husband to a queen, father to a phenomenon, diplomatic, nightmare to some, but a beloved figure to most, especially the children. Uncle Jack, small Ilari boy with luminous green eyes, tackled his leg, hugging tight. "Can you do the voice again?" Jack cleared his throat and growled in a deep baritone. "I am the terrifying monster of diplomacy, and I demand ice cream." Children shrieked in laughter. Villani just rolled her eyes and handed him a napkin. "You're making international relations into a circus," she said. "Sweetheart, we're the circus. I'm just owning it." Inside the Grand Dome, the lights dimmed. Villani stepped forward to address the galaxy. No crown, no fanfare, just truth. She spoke of exile, of fear, of the night she fled her palace pregnant and dishonored. She spoke of the moment she saw her child's eyes, realized that old systems had no place in a future shaped by love. She spoke of Jack and how a single reckless, shirtless, sarcastic human had done what 5 centuries of wisdom couldn't: make her feel alive. Then she said the words that changed everything. Unity is not surrender. It is expansion. Not losing who we are, but gaining who we were always meant to become. Cerise floated into the spotlight and dropped a glowing flower into her mother's hand. The hall erupted in cheers. After the ceremony, Jack found Villani alone on the old palace balcony, now converted into a botanical observatory, with plants from 50 systems growing under crystal domes. She stood barefoot, dress fluttering. Hair braided with starlight. "You're still the most dangerous thing in the galaxy," Jack said, leaning against the railing beside her. "And you're still the only man who could make me laugh during childbirth." "Hey, that doctor was overreacting," I said. "I was just checking the pulse. I didn't know that was a sacred Ilari organ." They both laughed. Then silence. The good kind. The kind built from trust. In years and arguments and makeups and nights with too much wine and mornings with too many why, is Cerise levitating the dog again? "Moments, Jack said after a while. "I never thought I'd be a dad. Let alone this kind of dad." Villani tilted her head. "The kind who carries a plasma pistol and extra snacks?" He nodded. "I spent my life flying solo, running from place to place, crashing ships, getting kicked out of bars, thought I was a lost cause." "You weren't lost," Villani whispered. "You were just waiting for you. For us." He turned to face her fully, eyes suddenly serious. "No matter how far. This goes how big it gets. Promise me something, anything. Don't let them forget where it started." Villani stepped closer, hands on his chest. "It started with a myth," she said softly, "and ended with a family." Later that night, back in their quarters now, a mix of royal, sweet, and toddler war zone, Cerise was curled up in her sleep pod, mumbling in 2 languages and occasionally glowing in her dreams. Jack and Villani sat on the floor together, eating sticky snacks, surrounded by unfinished policy documents and toy parts. Villani looked at him, smile soft. "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" "Giving up my bachelor lifestyle for the galaxy's most chaotic bedtime routine?" She nodded. He leaned in, brushing his nose against hers, not even for a second. The kiss slow, warm, the kind of kiss that doesn't need fire to burn. In the years that followed, Cerise grew into her name. She became the first hybrid ambassador, then the first child to command a Unity fleet exercise at age 7. By 12, she was teaching classes in empathy-based negotiation. By 20, she was leading expeditions beyond known space-bridging civilizations that had never spoken, never trusted, never believed in something new. But no matter where she went, or how far her legend stretched, she never forgot the voices that raised her. Her father, with his jokes and his wisdom hidden under sarcasm. Her mother, with her strength, her grace, and her constant reminder that power meant nothing without love. And every story she told began the same way. My father fell from the sky. My mother ruled the stars. I was born of fire and hope, and together we rewrote the galaxy. Epilogue. 50 years later, a statue now stood in the grand plaza of Unity Prime. It wasn't of a god or a general. It was a man in a worn leather jacket, holding hands with a woman in ceremonial robes. Between them, a little girl floating midair, laughing. The plaque read, "To those who loved boldly enough to change everything." Beside it, carved by Cerise herself, "Humanity didn't just survive. We loved our way into legend. The end." Asterisk.